Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly, absolutely crucial tension in modern medicine. Right now, we're living in this golden age of therapeutics. New treatments are hitting record-breaking numbers that we've never seen before. But of course, that incredible power brings a very real dilemma. Because as we push the absolute limits of what our bodies can do and how incredibly fast they can change, we're watching this pendulum swing wildly. It's swinging back and forth between jaw-dropping efficacy on one side and the very real, very stubborn, everyday side effects on the other. So it really forces us to ask, what actually happens when a medical breakthrough works a little too well? This right here is the core conflict of modern weight loss and recovery drugs. For decades, the medical community practically begged for pharmaceutical interventions that could actually move the needle on obesity, on severe osteoarthritis, on tissue recovery, and now, suddenly, we have drugs that are so incredibly potent, they're literally overwhelming the human system. So it begs the question, what's the point of a quote-unquote miracle cure if you're too nauseous to get off the couch every day? Section 1. The Next Generation Therapeutics. Okay, to put this into perspective, let's look at the SURMOUNT-5 trial data. This was a head-to-head comparison looking at adults with obesity, but specifically without type 2 diabetes. At the 72-week mark, patients maxing out their tolerated dose of semaglutide lost an average of 13.7% of their body weight. Which is great, right? But then you look at tirzepatide, which is a dual agonist, meaning it targets two different hunger hormones at the exact same time, and it significantly outperformed it, hitting an average weight loss of 20.2%. That is a massive, game-changing leap in efficacy for just a weekly injection. But wait, if 20% sounded incredible, enter Retatrutide. In phase 3 trials, this first-in-class triple hormone receptor agonist delivered a jaw-dropping 28.7% average body weight loss at the highest dose. These numbers completely hijack the headlines worldwide. To put that 28.7% in real terms, that equates to an average of over 71 pounds lost per patient. Just let that sink in for a second.
And the crazy thing is, the benefits actually go way beyond the number on the scale. The TRIUMPH-4 trial looked specifically at patients dealing with severe knee osteoarthritis. The results? A nearly 76% reduction in pain scores. More than 1 in 8 patients treated with retatrutide became entirely 100% free from knee pain by the end of the trial. Plus, it significantly dropped markers of cardiovascular risk and lowered systolic blood pressure by 14 points. We are talking about a profound, totally life-altering level of efficacy.
Now we're seeing a really similar hunger for extreme efficacy over in the world of research peptides. Take BPC-157, for example. The anecdotal hype surrounding this compound is just massive. If you listen to podcasts or scroll through the forums, you've got users claiming it dramatically accelerates recovery from brutal shoulder injuries, heals the gut, and there are even wild reports of it helping to heal complete tissue transections. And to be fair, the animal data for these compounds is undeniably impressive, which is exactly what's driving this intense public fascination. Section 2, the safety reality check. Because look, in medicine, there is always a biological trade-off. While the TRIUMPH-1 weight loss numbers grabbed all the headlines, the safety and tolerability data from May 2026 started telling a much more complicated, nuanced story. We started seeing a highly unusual safety signal emerge: dysesthesia. Essentially, this is an abnormal sense of touch, so normal, everyday sensations suddenly feel like pins and needles or even outright painful. It's a symptom you'd normally associate with something like multiple sclerosis, not a weight loss drug. We definitely didn't see this commonly with earlier generation drugs like semaglutide or tirzepatide. And what's really wild is how clearly dose-dependent this is. In the 12 milligram group for retatrutide, 12.5% of patients reported dysesthesia. Compared that to just 0.9% on the placebo. It really shows that the more aggressively we push these biological pathways to force that dramatic weight loss, the more the human nervous system starts to freak out and react in really unexpected ways. And then, there's the stomach issues. The gastrointestinal toll with retatrutide is materially worse than those earlier generation GLP-1s. The numbers are frankly staggering. Nausea hit 28.6% of people on the 4 milligram dose, 38.4% on the 9 milligram, and a whopping 42.4% on the 12 milligram dose, compared to just 14.8% on placebo. And vomiting, that hit 10.6%, 22.8%, and 25.3% respectively across those doses, versus under 5% for placebo. These aren't just, minor little inconveniences. These are severe, day-ruining side effects. So unsurprisingly, people started dropping out. The discontinuation rates due to adverse events scaled perfectly with the dose.
6.9% of people quit the 9 milligram dose, and 11.3% abandoned the 12 milligram dose. But here is the fascinating twist, the real silver lining here. Look at the 4 milligram dose. It still delivered a massive 19% weight loss, but its discontinuation rate was only 4.1%, which, crazily enough, is actually lower than the 4.9% dropout rate in the placebo group. This strongly suggests there is a functional sweet spot right there in the middle, balancing incredible efficacy with actual livable tolerability.
Section 3. Peptides and FDA crackdowns.
This whole efficacy versus tolerability debate brings us perfectly to how regulatory bodies are reacting to the safety risks of other trending therapeutics, specifically the absolute Wild West of peptides. When compounds show massive results in animals, human beings tend to want to skip the safety checks and dive right in. But the FDA, not so much. Just as a quick refresher, the standard clinical trial process exists to protect us from unknown biological landmines. Phase 1 is purely about safety and pharmacokinetics, literally just figuring out how the human body metabolizes a drug. Phase 2 looks for efficacy, and Phase 3 confirms everything on a massive scale. And that rigorous step-by-step process highlights exactly why popular peptides like BPC-157 are currently sitting in this murky regulatory gray area. Back in 2015, there was a sponsored trial that was supposed to establish foundational human safety and figure out the optimal dosing for BPC-157. But it was abruptly canceled and the data was just never published. Because we are completely missing this basic metabolic data, the doses people are injecting today are essentially just guesswork, extrapolated directly from rat studies. That glaring lack of safety data is exactly why the FDA stepped in to restrict compounding for these peptides. Because without those human trials, we're flying blind into some objective dangers. We literally don't know the long-term safety of BPC-157, we don't know how it interacts with your other medications, and honestly, most concerningly, because BPC-157 promotes angiogenesis, which is the formation of new blood vessels, there is a very real theoretical risk that it could feed and support hidden tumor growth in humans. Plus, if you're buying from unregulated internet research vendors, you're risking contaminants like endotoxins, which can build up and trigger severe inflammatory responses.
Section 4. Balancing efficacy with tolerability. So, where does this leave us? How do we actually navigate this new reality? Well, we're entering a stabilization phase. Clinicians and patients are realizing we have to balance this superhero-level efficacy with what the human body can actually tolerate. Dr. Craig Conover really hit the nail on the head here. He points out that the severe nausea and muscle loss we see so often with these drugs happen because patients are, quote, shotgunning the dose. By cranking up the dosage way too fast just to get quick aesthetic results, patients completely overwhelm their brain structures. Specifically, there's a primitive area in the brain called the area postrema. When it detects massive, sudden chemical changes in your blood, it hits the panic button and triggers severe vomiting. So the fix? The emerging clinical strategy right now is microdosing. Just like we saw with that beautiful 4 milligram sweet spot in the Retatrutide data, doctors are having pharmacies compound much smaller doses and then scaling them up incredibly slowly. The goal totally shifts. It's no longer about maximum immediate weight loss. It's about a sustainable 2 pounds or less per week. That gentler approach is a game changer. It helps preserve your lean muscle mass, it prevents that hollowed-out look people call Ozempic face, and it virtually eliminates that crippling nausea. So practically speaking, what's the playbook for safely accessing these therapies, especially with the FDA's upcoming 2026 update, which is going to move certain peptides back to legal compounding status? Well, safe access demands strict medical oversight. You can't just wing this. First, you find a licensed prescribing physician. Second, you get baseline blood work to monitor your inflammatory markers and metabolic shifts. Third, you only ever fill your prescriptions through highly regulated 503A or 503B compounding pharmacies to guarantee purity. And finally, you stick to your routine clinical follow-ups. No exceptions. You know, we are no longer living in an era where therapeutics simply don't work well enough. We finally have the compounds. We have drugs that can literally melt away nearly 30% of our body weight, completely eradicate osteoarthritis pain, and potentially accelerate tissue healing at record speeds. But as science pushes the absolute boundaries of human enhancement, it leaves us with this really provocative thought. The ultimate challenge of the next decade isn't going to be finding the cure anymore. It's going to be managing the trade-off. It's finding that exact perfect sweet spot between optimizing our biology and actually maintaining our daily comfort. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the science.